So today I'm going to talk about the Black Mirror episode Bandersnatch. I didn't start this channel really to talk about movies necessarily, but Black Mirror has always been a kind of a series that makes you think, and I think Bandersnatch made me think a lot, and I thought it's interesting to share what it made me think about with you and with everybody else online. There are a lot of videos out there that talk about the endings of Bandersnatch and the interesting approach it has to storytelling and controlling the story. It's not the first series to try and do nonlinear storytelling, but I think a lot of people agree with this, that it's the best implementation of it yet. Apparently, Netflix was testing this with kids' shows before to see how the interactions would work before actually bringing it to a show as big as Black Mirror. And as I said, there's a lot of discussions about this online. But here I thought it's more interesting to talk about something more subjective, and really the subjective view on the story itself. For me, the story was about control, which is interesting. It's pretty meta, obviously, that you're controlling someone, and this story of control. But if you look at the story, I think there are some interesting elements that make you think. And obviously, spoilers are ahead, because I'm going to reveal part of the story at least. The main character, Stefan, his childhood story, where he basically was connected to this rabbit, and basically the fact that he wouldn't go out with his mom because he couldn't find a rabbit, which the father had moved to a different place, leads to the mother being late and catching the later train, which gets derailed and she dies. And I think there's this sequence where he is talking about this, and initially he says that he really hates himself because he made his mother late, and then later he says that he hates him, and him could be the father, could be the rabbit, because they also made the mother late in a way. But the more interesting aspect of it is that it's not just his decision that leads to the mother's death. It's the fact that the father makes the decision to take the rabbit and put it away. Is the fact that Stefan makes the decision to not go if he can't find the rabbit. And it's the fact that the mother decides to wait for Stefan to come initially, and when he doesn't come, she leaves, obviously later. So it's not one person's decision that leads to this. It's a plethora of decisions, right? But what it does is it plagues his life with the fact that he's not in control, because basically in that situation, if the dad had not made the decision to remove the rabbit, then all of these things wouldn't have happened. So he has this feeling, in my opinion at least, that he's not in control, and then all the things that we as the audience do to him basically amplifies that feeling of being out of control and not being able to control your actions. But for me, it also came at a really interesting time, because it was a time that I was going through a similar situation where I kind of felt that I didn't have control in my life, on some aspects of my life at least. It's funny because it's the end of the year, so you tend to reflect on what you've done in the past year, and for me, one of the things that I saw was that there were a lot of good things that happened, but also a lot of things kind of didn't happen, and I felt kind of without any control in my future. I was trying to write these goals for next year, and I got stuck because I was like, even if I write a goal that I want to do, I don't know what I'm going to be doing next month or in 2 months, so that's all going to affect this goal that I'm setting for myself. So with that mindset, when I looked at it, this aspect of being in control of your faith or being out of control of your faith came into play. But I think the other aspect of it, which was really important, is the endings. There are at least 5 endings to this story, and all of the endings have a sad element, but some of them also have a happy element. Basically, the sad element being that in many cases, either Stefan dies or he goes to jail. But the happy element is sometimes the game is reviewed as a perfect piece of work. Sometimes it's reviewed as a mediocre piece of work, and sometimes it's reviewed as a very low-level game that no one should buy. So, although the end result more or less always is sad for Stefan, but at least it's not necessarily sad for the game. In fact, in one of those endings, the game is resurrected in today's day and age, which is interesting. For me, the takeaway from that was, even if we cannot change all aspects of the results in our life, we do still have some control at least, and we can change the journey. And I think when you go through this episode, a lot of it is not really about the end result. The end results are going to be the 5 things, but the journey is going to be different, and what Stefan goes through would be different. Now, if you want to apply that to your own life, the end results of so many decisions can be the same. We have this in engineering as well. Sometimes to achieve a specific performance requirements that you put for yourself, you can go about it in different ways, and all of them would have the end result of meeting that requirement. Which one you choose depends on, again, a lot of different aspects of what you're doing, but the journey as well, how much experience you would gain, for example, or how much experience you would lose. And for me, that really stood out. I think the timing was perfect. It's the start of the year. You're probably planning the journey for next year, so it's interesting to think about the decisions that you're making, the goals that you're putting, the different ways that you can achieve those goals, and how you can kind of shape that journey in different ways. You might feel out of control sometimes, but you're still, to an extent, in control. Me being a control freak, I always want to be in control, and that's not always possible, and sometimes it hurts to feel that you're not in control, but yeah, there are too many things that come into play. The other aspect of the episode that was also interesting for me was this play on the idea of multiverses. So there are different, in physics, there are different theories about multiverses, and one of them is that whenever you have a situation where there's a choice or there are options, all of those options would be happening, and each of them would give rise to a new universe. In this case, it was the same, where when you play it again and again, the end results are obviously changing. So sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, but those choices are available, and they're kind of acting like parallel universes in his life. Although in the story, you also see that sometimes the second time you review the episode, some of the actors might already know that they have been in this position before, which was an interesting aspect of it as well. So with that, I mean, this was the first time I was doing something unscripted on this channel, but I think this Bandersnatch really resonated with me in terms of it's the end of the year and we're thinking about next year. So there are things that you don't have any control over in your life. There are a lot of things that you do have control, and the decisions you make for those things that you do have control can affect the outcome, even though you might not feel like it at the time, and at least they can shape the journey that you'll have throughout the year. So take your time, think about next year, and put those goals in place to have a good journey. With that, I guess, Happy New Year. Today is the 1st of January, and I'll go back to the normal type of videos that we do on this channel next week. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.